Hi, welcome to the Civic Lens. I'm your host, Makena Kimaita. Stay engaged, stay informed, and see the nation through the Civic Lens. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Civic Lens, a podcast that aims to educate and elevate young people's lives in this country. You are more than welcome. We will be having really engaging conversations. And I'd like to introduce our first guest today, who is an excellent lady who has really been at the forefront of the movement currently happening in our country. The second female president of the Law Society of Kenya and the 51st president of the Law Society of Kenya. Karibu sana, Faith Odhiambo.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure and honor to have you.
Pleasure as well.
Maybe you can just start by telling us a little bit about your journey in the legal career. And how you got yourself here. I think most people are really wondering how we got so lucky, because we are truly lucky as a country, because you have really fought for us. And this is just a way of us to say thank you. And yeah, you can go ahead and just tell us a little bit about your legal journey.
You're making me blush. I would say that my legal journey started from my love of the law. From primary school straight up, I knew I wanted to do law. And sometimes you can say it's this cliche that in families those days, parents had, I think, 4 main careers, either be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or an architect. So those were the sort of convos that were floated around. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? But I had very open-minded parents. My mom was an accountant. She has been an auditor through and through in her life at KRA. My dad was a lecturer, but they were quite open-minded and supportive in terms of the areas that we want to build ourselves in terms of growth. And so from an onset, I was very clear on what I wanted to do. It's just the steps on how to get there was I would say the knacks and quacks. So I don't think everyone has a straightforward journey, because, I didn't have like someone in the family that I would say I would be looking up to and telling me, go do this, follow this direction. Because even if people say like debate club, but I didn't do those debate club. I was in music festival, science.
Congress.
Congress.
Yes.
You want to just leave the school and be around and hang around.
Yes.
But so if you think that was the kind of straight up journey I did, that was not it. And I remember when I got my KCSE results, I didn't get, I think minimum was a B+ to get to University of Nairobi. My hope and dream, in fact, my friends that I had, we were all saying we're going to meet at University of Nairobi. So I was not going to meet them at University of Nairobi. I was so heartbroken. And, my mom is this tough love people. My dad takes time and he listens to you, evaluates your feelings, he encourages you. My mom is like, are you going to cry here forever? The next thing is you should think about the future. What are you going to do? How are you going to plan? You can't mop here. If you wanted law to go to University of Nairobi, you would have worked harder. She was those kinds of parents and my parents were always those ones, for the school you work for is the school you'll go to. We're not looking for a school for you. But in fact, I'd applied to still go to University of Nairobi, but to do BCom because I didn't get what I wanted. In fact, I was moping everywhere. It's just that you can't now openly mop, but I was moping and I was telling God, this is so unfair. I know I should have worked harder, but even I knew you could have ensured I got higher marks. But okay, that's the past. But as fate would have it, Catholic University opened its doors.
My alma mater as well.
Yeah. So it opened their doors just that March. In fact, I was supposed to start within that year to go to UON, because my dad had seen Moi University and he said, it's still far, and I think they were clingy. They weren't ready for me as the second born to leave and go and stay all the way on. But Catholic University opened. I applied. I was taken, and so I would say, as history, we thank God we got in, and we were the first pioneers at Catholic University. So trying to prove yourself, competing against University of Nairobi students and more university students. And I say I got very good friends who would also help with borrowing books, getting information, because when you're still a new university, you don't have access to so much. But I remember some of our moot courts, my friends in University of Nairobi are the ones who shared with us. And when you apply and you beat them, they say they're not telling us any more moot courts that are going on.
Yeah.
So from there to KSL, of course. And I would say that in terms of leadership, I first joined FIDA Kenya. I would say my roots or leadership roots have been grounded in FIDA in terms of understanding the rights of women and children and the struggles, and also, fighting for equity. I remember I was part of the council that were calling members of parliament, telling them to go and vote for the two-thirds gender bill, holding them accountable and telling members of their public, if this bill doesn't go through, it's your member of parliament. And the campaign was quite fantastic at that particular time. I was still a younger lawyer, and so I learned under seniors like Dr. Ruth Aura, the Nelly Mathekas of that time, now Millicent, and who are now judges. Some are now judges. But I would say that it helped ground me in a better understanding in terms of leadership and also earning and learning. What is your place and responsibility? I remember when I was being told to contribute for the feeder house, and just as a young lawyer, removing 50,000. Someone can think it's a little money, but it's a lot.
Lot of money.
It's a lot of money for a young lawyer to just give it as, the free money that you're giving in support. But you see those instances and those seniors teaching you that you have to learn to sacrifice to build something good and something that you believe in. It's not about what you're coming to get. It's what's the impact, what are you coming to bring to the table. So I learned also networking, building net connections, and you're only as good as your network. Your network is as good as your network. So my networks grew substantially, particularly in the civil society, while learning from various seniors and knowing how to connect and who can get you from one place to another. And the late Rosalyn Odede, I remember, she's the one who even encouraged me to join FIDA Kenya, the former chair of Kenya Commission of Human Rights. And she is the one who also challenged me and told me, why don't you try Law Society of Kenya? And, I said, because I was the secretary then, and I had the opportunity to vie as the vice president, the vice chair, and I knew I would get it. But I said, why not try my hand in Law Society of Kenya? It's different. It's maybe you could say more challenging. But I said, instead of being in my comfort zone, there are also things you can learn, and there are things also that I was unhappy with and I wanted to change, because I had been serving in the Young Lawyers Committee, trying to bring opportunities for young lawyers and services that were more akin for young lawyers. I also served at the CPD committee. And so I sort of had the opportunity to learn activities of the Law Society, how things work, the importance of, developing programs for learning for advocates as well, and things that needed change that I felt I could contribute to changing. So that's how I made a leap of faith to vie as a council member then. I actually served in Harvest Council, which turned out to be a very tumultuous time in my life. And I remember that was the time I had my first child. And it was so stressful. There were moments we were fighting, and I'm trying to put the baby down. He's cried the whole night. I haven't slept, and I have to respond to propaganda messages on a WhatsApp message. People are like, in Faith, you need to respond. I, in fact, at that point, I was ready to dump leadership. I remember as we were ending that term, I felt so emotionally drained. And I was like, I'm giving so much of myself that you feel totally lost. Like you're giving and giving and giving until
there's nothing to give.
There's nothing to give.
Yeah.
and you're fighting all the time. And I was like, life cannot be like this. My mother used to make fun of me that don't quarrel too much. Your baby will come out very, angry.
Yeah.
So even vying then after, I remember I'd said I don't want to vie again. And it's a lot of encouragement from members of the bar and others saying we really are connected with you and understood your fight and understood why you stood for the CEO and against a lot of the decisions that were being made by the president then. And we understand you stood on principle and on your integrity, and you should vie for not for yourself, it's for the society. And I remember the mantra that time people were saying everyone who serves that council must go.
Council must go, yeah.
Yeah.
Our AGMs were chaotic.
Yeah, and it was the Fagia water move.
Yeah.
And so, after so much encouragement, because I remember my predecessor had a sit down with me and tried to convince me, and I said, no, absolutely not. One of my colleagues in council then, who was later on my opponent for president, had sat me down to convince me, and I said, absolutely not. And I think some of my peers, when they sat down and told me, you need to stop being selfish. This is for the society, not for yourself.
Yeah.
You need to think of the greater good. Then I, of course, had to sit with my family and particularly my spouse to get consent because, you need a lot of support being a young mom and having to travel around the country. And you're also now explaining yourself. So that was for me, it was an emotionally tough time because you're trying to justify to people why you have these principles, why you stand on this ground, why you believed you are doing the right thing, irrespective of what other people think and why they should still support you. But I'd say by the grace of God, we made it. Vying for president was equally challenging. I thought vice president was the worst. But president was harder because people now see you as a woman. And they feel that women should need some covering, some protection. You'll not be able to stand firm on your own. Secondly, the question of people have viewed that the head of state was quite tough headed or a tough man, and that convincing him or coming out strongly as a president of the Law Society, addressing executive overreach would be an impossibility for a woman at that position. And let alone, the reality is we were 3 women on that ballot. There was my senior, Caroline Kamende, there was my junior, Harriet Moshe,
yeah.
and she was actually also the youngest, so that was also a bold leap for her as well. And the only 2 men vying, and it was hard building a mantra that it's time for a woman, and having male vice presidents really helped because now it clearly showed or signaled that there could be a possibility of having a man as a vice president and a woman as president. And so building that narrative and convincing people of your track record, convincing people that you had what it takes, that you had contribution and your vision was a vision that can build the Law Society to the next level was quite challenging. So I would say that was quite a tough campaign, and it really took the support of a lot of my seniors who kept advising me, encouraging me and praying for me, the young lawyers who came out in large numbers, and my peers in the maid bar. And I would say that one day we would write a story about. But it was equally as scary, but an exciting opportunity at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's very elaborate. And now look at you. You have a Commonwealth Award. How does that make you feel? Was it shocking?
Yeah, it's surreal, because I really feel, in honesty, I don't feel like I did something so amazing. I'm sorry. But, that's what I think, because sometimes I honestly believe that even any other president should have done or would have done the same thing because, initially when we started it, because it started as a joke, because what happened was we're leaving the premise of there was a judicial officer magistrate who had been shot in line of duty. So the bar stands together. And we came to stand in solidarity with the judiciary and her husband as well, who was from the bar, and us just condoling, because it's just unfortunate the gun got the judicial officer.
Officer.
It could have shot any
Anyone.
person within that court that day. And that is something that we still strongly condemn to date. And so when we were there, after we left, I got distress calls that advocates were at Central Police Station, and they were struggling to get access to be able to meet their clients. And majority, of course, were young lawyers. And when I said, okay, I'm coming. So when I got there, I found them banging the front table
Yes.
next to where the OB is taken, and they're demanding to see those who had been arrested, because some had just come out in the morning and they are just arrested. And so we asked to see the OCS. He wasn't there. We saw the deputy OCS. But in a bid, he says, let's talk outside when the OCS comes. And as we are talking, the guy just decides to tear gas us and just say, you either leave this police station. And we said, where are we going? So when they tear everyone, and in fact, one of our council members, Irene Otto, was injured. So we had to ensure and take her that she gets treatment. We left, but came back that night. And I said, now that they have tear gassed me, I'm gonna come every single time.
Yeah.
So we came back and we said we're not leaving until every single person is out.
Yeah.
And we said we're going to make your life hell and we're gonna be here. And so, being overwhelmed and the number of advocates that keep filing up. And what I really amazed me was the young advocates. Some who closed their offices and said, if they can tear gas our president, who can't they tear gas? So they all came in larger droves. We have seniors coming out to join. Later on, even some politicians came to just hold a vigil so that would ensure, and a lot of civil society members. And thereafter, like a natural attrition, I think Kenyans have this true ability to stand with each other.
Yeah.
The way Kenyans came out, Kenyans for Kenya, when our fellow Kenyans were dying out of hunger, is the same way Kenyans came out. We saw doctors coming out. We saw psychiatrists coming out. We saw different civil society organizations. Kenyans even came out to contribute.
Yeah.
I would leave church and someone would say, Faith, we are praying for you. You know what you're doing. Just tell us where we can contribute money.
Yeah.
Because we can't come out to the streets, some of us, but we can contribute financially to help the advocates running around, to pay for the bail for those who have been arrested. And, those small instances, I felt like it was natural.
Yeah.
Like every single person was doing the best they could. Doctors were risking their lives. I remember times getting calls, doctors saying that police have threatened them, that they'll not be able to leave those medical centers. And we had to send journalists. I really thank Larry Mador, because he really came through. He would go and record. You see, because some don't fear local journalists.
Yes.
But they fear the international media. So I would, when you'd call him and just tell him, just go and put your camera there, even if it's not rolling, that's enough, will scare them away.
Yeah.
And so we were able to secure even their safe exit from those medical centers. And we had even doctors who were shot. And that seeing people coming out, just like a natural attraction to just help, was really what moved me and kept me going, because people keep coming. You maim some, others keep coming every single time.
Yeah.
And it really amazed me. For me, I see the Gen Zs are the real heroes, because they were on the streets, till dark, dancing even on the streets, having fun, and saying they'll continue coming out. They'll keep on standing in solidarity. They'll keep on singing these songs to just remind each other that we're in a solidarity to save our own country.
Yes.
And for me, the ability, the elements that people can leave from the X spaces or the Twitter spaces to come to the streets. And what I loved is that a majority were not there to destroy. They were just there to march peacefully, share their views. In fact, I honestly believe that if police had not used brute force because day one was peaceful, except the killing of Rex. And even the second Mandamano was not, when they were walking during the day, everything was
It was
okay.
okay.
The only problem was when it got dark, that's when the
And
violence
it
would
started.
start.
Yeah.
And so if there was that willingness to engage instead of use of violence, I think things would have gone pretty much differently. And so I still say they are the true heroes because they woke up a lot of the generations of our time that had sort of given up, did not think there was hope for this country. And they have made people rise up and realize that you have a role to play. You, as professionals, people now are asking each other hard questions.
Questions, yes.
We need to act in our professional spaces. You don't need to go out on the streets, but we need the architects, you need the engineers
Yes.
to question the buildings that are collapsing, to question some of these structural plans that are being developed. Each and every one of us has a place and a role to play in terms of supporting the development of the country. And, even for those who fear that you may be censured by government, having a voice or questioning things is not necessarily negative. Sometimes it's also to give advisory,
Yes.
because by giving good professional advisory or alternative advisory, then it gives the government the opportunity to also analyze, even based on what plans are given by foreign investors.
Yes.
If our local expertise can also come out and say, we don't agree with this for 1 to 3 reasons, and we are suggesting these alternatives, then it stops this notion that this is just opposition talk, opposition talk. We are giving you valid reasons,
Reasons.
valid options that
Yes.
as a country you need to start thinking clearly about.
I think it's funny that you say you think that you didn't do much. I think as a country, we are so used to mediocrity that we get shocked when somebody is actually doing their job. Let's give an example. Like the governor of Moranga, he's doing exemplary work. And I think all of us who are in different counties keep thinking, what are our governors doing? In fact, I saw someone on X ask, does he get more money than the rest of the counties? Or so I'd like to tell you that you have shown what LSK is about. You have shown what it actually means. I think you've given people a different perspective of what LSK is. You have given lawyers who are young opportunities that I don't think they'd have ever gotten if you'd not been very, very stern and very firm in whatever it is that you are doing. I think, please don't sleep thinking you are just doing your job. You have done more than your job. I think you've also shown people that there are different ways that they can engage the government. It doesn't matter which profession you're in, just as you've said. And so in light with what is happening, we have a lot of, obviously, abductions. And I'd like to ask you, what are the limits of freedom of speech? Is it that we're doing something wrong? Is it that, what are the limits of freedom of speech? Because I know you have been called to families, and it must be really, really difficult because there's nothing much you can do, really, rather than, urge that these people be produced in court, urge that the government doesn't do this to us. And I just want our audience to really understand the freedom of speech. What are the limits and the confines of freedom of speech?
Well, you see, the only challenge that we have sometimes on social media is that people express themselves, and sometimes because of use of AI, they can go a bit to the extreme. I was having a discussion with an ambassador recently, and I was just explaining the overzealousness, and particularly the pictures depicting the first family or the head of state as being on coffins. Well, that is a threat to life, and it's actually illegal. It's illegal, but I don't agree that if somebody does something that is illegal, that we pick them up, we have them tortured, or they totally disappear, or there are procedures under the law. So if somebody has done something wrong, have them arrested, let them be presented in court, let them be read out their charges, let them, defend themselves. You see, that's how a society should be. we cannot say that we have a state where our way is, use of extrajudicial force. There's picking up people. We don't know who has picked them up because police are denying it's not them. You saw the head of the National Police Service, the Inspector General Police, saying that he does not know and that Kenyans should say they are safe. The head of DCI is saying that it's not them, they do not know. You see, somebody cannot be picked up and then be asked about what they posted on social media. Why are they attacking the head of state? And then you say you don't know. You see, it's marks of malice and arrogance, and people are not foolish in this country. And whether or not it's use of, the National Police Service or different police, the reality is the person who constitutionally is responsible for our security and safety should take action. That's why we see people calling out, and even the Law Society calling out to the head of the National Police Service, you must give us answers. You see, you cannot say you don't know and then you say we are safe. It doesn't work that way. You must tell us then these are extra overzealous Kenyans who support maybe the head of state, who have taken matters into their own hands. We have arrested them. They are going to be presented in court. But this is a situation where nothing is happening. And the worst thing is we're now starting to see people turning up dead. And this is not the case that we're going to accept in our country. In this new dispensation, in this new constitution, we cannot say that we'll allow the Moi era to come back in our country. As citizens, it's our responsibility to resist any efforts to use illegal measures, to arrest illegal measures, to try and cower our members who are just vocalizing. Someone shared with me an index that was done in terms of social media activity, and Kenya has risen in the ranks in terms of activity and us expressing ourselves on the social media space. But I honestly feel our level of expression is not as high as 2024, because a lot of those who were abducted are not as active post the traumatic experiences. Some, after counseling, sort of come out of it, but some never do. You see, they totally retract. They do not want to speak. I remember recently there was a family that had came and their kid had disappeared for over 3 months. And when he was released, his first instructions, or what he informed us, was that he was told not to be seen on social media, not to say anything, not to speak to any media. And so you see also, after that fear of being kept in communicado for that while, it is only natural for people to, sort of cocoon back. But what I don't also like is seeing our national leaders who come out in jest and saying they abducted themselves. They should come out and tell us who are the abductors, what they were doing. They were pretending, they were hiding themselves. It also smacks of also a lot of arrogance in our country. And also, elements that people feel that they are above the law. Something that I always say, or I like to remind politicians, is that you may think you're above the law, but things always change. The senior counsel Orengo, the Honorable Governor, normally says that governments eat themselves. And I will also remind a depiction that the retired Justice Willie Mutunga gave in an NCAJ meeting, as he was the first year after this government came into power, and he was addressing certain cabinet secretary that was sitting there, and he reminded them that, you remember the former head of state refused to obey court orders and refused to swear in judges, would continuously ignore court orders. He said you do what he wants. But that same retired head of state was before the same court trying to save his son from arbitrary arrest. And so people forget, but if we do not obey properly obtained court orders, we will find ourselves in the same quagmire. But the leaders, the next crop of leaders that will come, will be more emboldened and much worse. And because we are seeing a trajectory in our country that is saddening or quite worrying, Kenya that is seen to be progressive in terms of obedience of court orders, in terms of, progressive in terms of the laws that we have, is seen retrogressive. And so as a country, as a nation, we must ask ourselves hard questions. Where do we want to see ourselves and what is our future? The problem is politicians feel that the law is cultured or curated based on what is suitable for them. And when we start having the story of the animal farm, then that's when power gets into people's minds, and they think the moment they get in power, then they are more equal than others. Yeah.
Just to wrap it up, because time is not on our side, I'd just like us to talk about what you envision the LSK doing more for the citizens, as well as holding the judiciary sort of accountable, as well as our call to action. Like, what would you like to see people do more? Because I don't think this is something... I think the events of June 25th changed this country forever. Going forward, we are going to see a very, very accountable government. Personally, that is what I'd love to see. Not because they are accountable, but because they know that the citizenry is on their neck. What's your call to action, and where do you see the role of LSK play more in terms of representation of us as citizens, as well as holding the judiciary accountable?
Well, I'd say that what I hope to see more is, first of all, lawyers coming out more strongly in taking up more pro bono cases. I'm very happy that we've had an influx of young lawyers and even mid-bar and seniors taking up pro bono cases, because the 25th events, I had seniors leaving their houses. And, when someone has been abducted, in fact, the night of 25th, so many people were abducted. And so when we would hear that they have been taken to this place, I would put it on the group. We have several volunteering and saying, I'm going there right now. Some are going to hold fort and just sit at a police station the whole day and say, I'm here, they are not here. So then we send someone elsewhere. So we had an amazing people getting out of their comfort zone. Even thinking that advocates who are in the top tier farms, who I thought would never
do anything like that,
things like this, were out there on the streets with everyone, saying, where can we help? Can we help in drafting of pleadings? Can we help in, following up on these certain cases, in doing follow-up letters? Because there was a great understanding that I'm needed in one place or in several places at the same time. So you have an army of people who are coming out. And that's what I hope we never lose. And whoever comes after me, my predecessor, should never lose that. Because having an army of advocates gives you a voice that you cannot imagine. Because you're standing on the voices of thousands of amazing lawyers who are ready to go out for you. In terms of holding the judiciary accountable, something I just want to say is that, I find it quite funny that when the Law Society came out strongly saying that the judiciary must be held accountable for its actions, that the same judiciary say that let the Judicial Service Commission do its work, and that we should not interfere. Now the same judiciary is saying the Judicial Service Commission should not do its work, that they're going too far, they should stop. So who will hold the judiciary accountable? You see, you cannot say you're gods upon yourselves, that you can be investigator, judge, and juror. That's impunity. And we saw that in the Moi days as well. And the challenge, even during the Gen Z protest, it took intervention of advocates and even on social media to call out high bail and bond terms. Because high bail and bond terms and frustration in being in and out of courts is the reason why government can permeate impunity. Because if you're frustrated in the criminal justice system, then we continue to see the challenges that members of the public continue to face. We continue to see people being disinherited in succession matters, land being stolen from people. The Chitembe case was a good example to show how judicial impunity can affect people's lives. And so if we cannot hold the judiciary as well accountable, we must call them out.
Yes.
Because we cannot have a country where the buck stops with them, that's the end. They have made the decision, they are final, they cannot be asked questions, they cannot be held accountable. Because I still persist that in many times, the corruption is in the decision. And so if you want to be covered and say, my decision is my decision cannot be questioned, what I've written there no one can ask anything about it, then it means that we are then adopting judicial corruption
yes.
in our decision-making processes. We'll never be able to hold them accountable. We'll never be able to ask questions. Kenyans will continue to suffer. People will continue to be disinherited. People will continue to fail to see justice. Telling someone to appeal. People don't understand the lives of a normal Kenyan. Sometimes you cannot even afford the basics of that lawyer to take the case even to the magistrate's court. Now, and then years of being in court, not getting justice. Your matters taking years and years before you get justice. Then somebody telling you appeal. Sometimes when I'm asked some questions, I ask myself, do these judicial officers live in this country? Do they see the pain that others go through? Lawyers are held accountable as well. Someone says that for corruption to happen, it also needs lawyers. But sometimes it doesn't need lawyers. Sometimes they can go directly to the clients.
Yeah.
And even if it goes through the lawyers, we have mechanisms and we hold lawyers accountable. But further, the people who are sitting in those Oval offices that also are expected to defend the Constitution, uphold integrity and the rule of law are those sitting on the bench. So we must continue to hold all those arms of government accountable. And, judiciary has come in the scope of scrutiny a lot because of a lot of the kind of decisions that are coming out. And having sometimes the technology is also a good way because it has helped us scrutinize the challenge people have been raising of courts actually not sitting, the delays that are actually there, and also cases when we had the recent decisions that are conflicting, all coming from the same court. And so even if you try, the evidence are slowly coming out. And so I say that why it's quite important for us, because even as we look about introspecting into the electoral, the IEBC, and the decisions they make, and ask probably the next questions people asking will be having a boundaries delineation, and what will that mean for us? All of these things all boils down to our courts, the decisions of our courts. And so we still even have decisions that people, when they read, you raise a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And the element that people want to say that's my decision and that it's sanctity, you cannot touch it, you cannot ask anything about it, is a fallacy that we must break down. It is high time we hold people accountable for their decisions, because the devil is in the details. And I hope that is something that we don't lose, because the people standing between anarchy in this country and another situation where we go to war is the judiciary. And so people must have public trust in the judiciary. They must know that when I come before these courts, they are courts of integrity, they are courts that will defend the Constitution, they'll defend the rule of law, they will stand for what is right. Then we will have situations where people go for a contest. When they don't win, they have to accept, because we have public trust in the institution called the judiciary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith, for honoring an invite and the extremely good interview and insights. We really, really appreciate it. For our audience, thank you. That's it for today. Kindly support our president as much as possible. Your voices are really big, especially on social media. Keep that fire burning, and we hope to have more episodes that enlighten you and teach you more. Thank you so much. See you on the next one. Hi, welcome to the Civic Lens. I'm your host, Makena Kimaita. Stay engaged, stay informed, and see the nation through the Civic Lens.